Hey guys, it's Nathan from the Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel. Welcome to the next Zoom interview in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. Today's interview is a very special one for me. Those of you who know me know that I'm not just a creator of YouTube content, I'm also a viewer. And whether it's to learn something new or get inspiration for my next big adventure, I often turn to YouTube. And like most of you, I have a short list of my favorite YouTubers. And at the very top of that list is Ryan Van Duzer. And I'm not alone. Ryan currently has over 128,000 subscribers from around the world and has published more than 800 videos chronicling his adventures. So when I reached out to Ryan and asked him if he'd be willing to be interviewed, and he actually said yes, you know that I'm not just excited, but I'm totally geeking out today to introduce my guest, who is none other than Mr. Ryan Van Duzer. Ryan, welcome.
Yay! You just made my day. Thank you so much. It feels great to be here chatting with you, and I love your t-shirt.
I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. So there's a whole section of questions that are actually devoted to Muppets. I'll say that from the very first time I saw a video where you cut to Kermit the Frog going, yay! I knew that I was on the right channel, and it just upped that much more for me. I usually wear like a cycling t-shirt, but I had to bust something out of the Muppet drawer.
I love it. I wore a bike shirt, so how's that?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It says, sell your car, ride a bike.
Excellent. For those who don't know, we know that you own several bikes. How many bikes you got?
I think I have 6 right now.
Yeah, but no car.
I give them away a lot, so the number always changes.
Yeah, and you live in Boulder, Colorado, which I've visited Boulder, and it's got to be on a very short list of the most bike lanes per mile of any city in the United States.
It's up there, yep.
All right, Ryan. Well, a question I always like to ask folks, just a bit of an icebreaker, is can you tell us a little bit about yourself, including how you got into cycling?
Right on. So I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, a very outdoorsy city, and I'll never forget my first bicycle, which was hidden under the Christmas tree when I was in elementary school, so maybe 5 years old. And from the moment I got on that bike with the training wheels, I knew that I loved it. I loved the feeling of freedom. I loved the wind in my hair. I loved the little bell, ding, ding, ding. And from that moment on, I found a way or an excuse to ride a bike all the time. And also when I was young, I remember watching an Earth Day special on PBS, talking all about saving the planet and being nice to Mother Nature. And at that point, as a young boy, I correlated cars with pollution. And I was like, I'm going to ride a bike for the rest of my life. I'm never going to have a car. And that's essentially it.
Wow. You're very committed to that idea that you adopted early on. That's awesome. So when did you start filming your adventures?
The very first adventure I ever filmed was when I rode my bike home from Honduras. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras for 2 years. And when I finished my service, I traded in my plane ticket that Peace Corps gave me to fly home. I got, I don't know, $500 or $600. And I used that money to buy a bike and to ride home. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to go on this epic adventure. And I wanted to really process what I had done for the last 2 years living in this small village in Honduras, but also have time to think about the future. And we all know as cyclists that we do our best thinking on a bike, right? We have so many hours a day when we're riding a bike to think. And I do my best thinking when I'm on a bike. And that was my first adventure I ever filmed. I had a little Sony Handycam. This is way before online video, before YouTube. I had hopes of making a documentary or something about my adventure. And that's the first one I ever filmed.
Cool. Well, can you talk to us about the different jobs you've had in television and media and what led you to eventually pursue YouTube as your platform of choice?
Yeah, so I'll piggyback on the last story. I got home from Honduras, most amazing adventure of my life. Had never felt so alive ever. I wanted to figure out a way to keep on doing this, to make this my job, to be a storyteller. And so I took the footage that I filmed and edited a short, like 5-minute trailer for the entire adventure. And at the time, Travel Channel had a show where they highlighted people's vacation footage, essentially. They chose my video. I got 500 smackaroos, and it played on national TV. And from that moment, I wanted to be like a travel show host, like an adventure travel host, showing viewers around the world how incredible it is to travel and meet new people and see new things and challenge yourself.
What year was this?
So this was in 2005.
Okay.
Yep. And so from that point on, I realized that being on national TV is very difficult. You can't just walk into the Travel Channel and be the next great host. So I went back to Boulder, started at the very bottom of the TV world, and I started a cable access show in Boulder, essentially like Wayne's World. I ran around with that same Sony Handycam and filmed local adventures with the hopes of inspiring viewers to go do cool stuff in Boulder. And the show was called Out There. And the whole idea was to inspire people to get off their couches, get out there. And so I started that. And then YouTube online video came up. I started doing adventure videos for the local newspaper where I was getting paid $50 a video. So I was rolling in it. But I still, my dream was to be like a national level TV host. I got my foot in the door with Travel Channel. I started doing some online video with them. I shot some pilots for the History Channel. I was on a Discovery Channel survival show at one point. So I had some success in the TV world. But I realized after 10 years that I didn't have the control and the freedom that I wanted. You know, a lot of times I'm shooting a story, but there's 10 editors between me shooting it and it airing on the Travel Channel. And they kind of cut out the me parts of it. And I was like, I want my freedom. And so about 6 years ago, 2015-ish, I was like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, put all my effort into YouTube, and try to build up my channel big enough to the point that I can make a living doing YouTube and never have to deal with the frustrating TV world again. So that's a very quick story about how I got to where I am today.
That's cool. And you alluded to this already, but that out there became get out there, and that's still sort of the animating message behind your content today. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that message of get out there and how that is a driver for you?
Yeah, so my dream and my hope with all my content is to inspire viewers to get outside and challenge themselves. And that can be anything. You don't have to be an elite athlete. You don't have to be super duper physically fit or have the most expensive gear. Just get outside, and whatever that means to you. Maybe you just want to go on a 2-mile walk around your neighborhood. Maybe you just want to like climb some trees, but I just think the benefit of being outside is just so huge. It just makes me feel better when I'm outside. I've had a frustrating day. We can all relate to this. You just go outside for a little bit, you breathe some fresh air, you look at some cool clouds, and you feel better. And so that's always been the goal with out there. And out there can be anything. It doesn't have to be riding 4,000 miles across the United States because, let's be honest, most people don't have the time to do that. But we all have the time to get outside a little bit. And I believe that once people get outside a little bit, they start making being outside a priority. They do a little bit more and more and more. And I believe as a society, the entire planet, if we can get more humans outside, I think it's going to have huge benefits because we're just nicer to one another when we're calm and relaxed. We're nicer to the planet. When we've been to these amazing places, we want to protect the environment. So that is the underlying message behind get out there.
Right on. You mentioned your Peace Corps experience, and then you also talk in your videos about having spent a year abroad in Sweden, I guess, in high school. How do you feel like these experiences have shaped the way that you see the world?
Yeah, so I grew up in Boulder, and I never traveled really. I grew up in a family, single mom, 4 kids. We didn't have money to travel and go on vacations, but I remember watching the Discovery Channel and wanting to go to these exotic places around the world and travel and see things outside of this Boulder bubble that I had lived in all my life. So I applied for a Rotary International Scholarship my senior year of high school, and they sent me to Sweden. I didn't choose Sweden. It was just where they sent me, and I lived with a family there. It was absolute destiny. It was the most wonderful host family you could ever imagine. And that was my first taste of the world outside of the United States. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And that fueled me to want to continue traveling. The Peace Corps was an extension of that. Then after Sweden, I came to college, got a degree, but I didn't want to go straight into the 9 to 5 working world. I really wanted to travel, but also provide a service to the world. And, I decided to apply to the Peace Corps. And again, I didn't choose Honduras. They just kind of match up your skills.
Right.
And they said, you're going to Honduras, you want to be a youth development volunteer. They have a new project there and you'd be great there. So I went to Honduras. And again, it was eye-opening. It was the first time in my life where I've lived in a developing country that is, not Sweden or Boulder, which are very comfortable places to live. I lived in a small mud house with, occasional running water and electricity. And it really opened my eyes to how most of the world lives outside of the Western world. And I loved it. I worked with kids, worked in schools. I coached soccer teams, and again, we were outside all the time with the kids. I mean, that was the thing. Like being outside was the goal.
So you did your first bicycle tour, as you mentioned, on that return trip from your Peace Corps service in Honduras to your home in Boulder, which you estimate, I guess, to be about 4,500 miles.
Yeah.
And you talked about that inspiration to undertake that trip and decide to film it. Correct me if I get any of this information wrong, but since your first tour, you've gone on and you've crossed the USA from east to west at least 3 times. And north to south at least 3 times. And this is all just kind of, digging into your YouTube channel, and as well as shorter US tours, and also gone to other more exotic places like Cuba and the Baja Peninsula, and trekked off the bike to live out some unique experiences in places like Venezuela and Nepal. Ryan, you've had some pretty incredible adventures, and you've taken us along to share in many of these incredible journeys. I recently watched your video about trekking in Nepal, and there's a scene in there where you're up on a mountain over 19,000 feet above sea level, and you refer to it as one of the most epic places that you'd ever been. Does that still stand out in your mind that way?
Yeah, people ask me all the time about my favorite country, which is very hard to answer because there's so much to love about every place I visit. But I really do have a special place in my heart for Nepal. It is stunning. It is so beautiful. Those Himalayas they're mind-blowing. I'm from Colorado. I have beautiful mountains right out my window, but they're not the Himalayas. It's a different thing. And the people are just so kind and gentle and generous. And yeah, whenever I go to Nepal, I feel connected to something bigger. And I love it.
Well, what about on the bike? Is there a place that you've visited on a bike trip that stands out in your mind as particularly memorable?
Yeah, again, there's so many. I mean, that's why I ride my bike, is to go to cool places. I've really, really enjoyed the central coast of California when I was riding down the West Coast. Big Sur, we've seen the videos or photos of the waves crashing against these rocks. And it's like straight out of a movie. I love that area. I love Baja. Baja is, very desolate. It's a desert, but there's some really beautiful plants out there that look like they're straight out of a Dr. Seuss, book, these squiggly little curlicues on the end of these cactuses. And I love the desert. I love the desert in general. I love the open skies and the stars and just how quiet it is. Cuba has some amazing places. I could just go on. The rest of the podcast could be me talking about beautiful places around the world. I've been very fortunate to see some spectacular views.
As we know, there's a lot of planning that goes into these trips. One member of a Facebook bikepacking group that we actually have here in Kentucky wanted me to ask you if there's one adventure that you've had in particular where you felt like there was the best return on your investment in terms of planning. So, you do all this planning and there's the payoff in terms of the ride. So relative to the amount of work that you had to put into it, what was the biggest gain?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question. So whoever asked that, kudos. I did the Baja Divide in two sections. The first time I went, very inexperienced. I'd never done an off-road bikepacking adventure. Up until that point, all of my adventures were on pavement roads. This was my first dirt one, and I needed, 3-inch tires. There's lots of sand. It's pretty desolate. There are not nearly as many resupply points as your average road tour where you can just drop into a gas station. When I went to Baja, I thought I was going to do the whole thing in one go. It's 1,700 miles. And by, day 10, 11, 12, I was so beat up. That trail just is really, really hard and rough and desolate and hot. And I bailed, decided to leave. It was the first bike adventure I've ever done where I quit halfway through. I was over it. My body was toast. And I went home, licked my wounds. And 2 years later, I went back to finish up the final section. And I did a lot more planning because I knew what was coming. And so it was really important to really dial in my gear and my food and be looking at maps and having the right clothing and the gear to fix my bike. And so, yeah, that one probably had the best return on investment as far as like really dialing in everything I needed and then making it.
Great answer. Is it with that second trip that you met John and Mira?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Well, it paid off for you in that way too.
Well, it's really funny. Somebody commented recently saying, if you had finished Baja all in one go the first time, you probably never would have met John and Mira.
Yeah.
So the world works in very mysterious ways, right?
Yeah. Of course, not everyone has the opportunity, and you mentioned this, or the time to be able to go out on these adventures on the same scale as what you do. I'll say a big focus of what I'm trying to do with the Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel is to show folks that there's lots of new places to explore that are not super far from home. And that the important thing is as you put it, that just to get out there. So are there any adventures that you've had that are particularly close to home that are memorable to you?
Yeah, because of the pandemic, I stopped traveling far away. I started doing adventures closer to home. I guess the first one was the Great Divide, which isn't super close, but it goes through Colorado. That one was amazing. This summer, I did the Colorado Trail, which the starting point is less than 100 miles from my house. And that one was, incredible. It was beautiful and actually the hardest bikepacking trip I've ever been on by far. It really challenged me in a lot of ways. I did some just overnighters where I just ride my bike 30 miles away from my house and just camped outside. And sometimes that's all you need just to refresh your soul, have a little reset on life and feel a little bit more connected to nature and more connected to yourself. And it's just fun. Like the reason why we all do this, why we all ride bikes is probably because it's fun, right? There are some moments that are hard and challenging, but really it's fun to do this. Yeah, you don't need to go far, far away to have a great time and to have fun.
In the Love Cycle series, you planned your route to ride on some rail trails. And you've talked about how nice it is to travel that way because you don't have to worry about the distracted drivers. Mm-hmm. And I believe you've incorporated rail trails into some of your other tours as well. So I say that I also love riding the rail trails. And so I'm curious, if out of all the rail trails that you've ridden, do you happen to have a favorite?
There are some great ones. I'm going to go with the Katy Trail, the longest rail trail in the United States that goes essentially across all of Missouri. And I did that one at first when I was riding a New Belgium 3-speed cruiser bike across the country in 2009. And I hit that trail in Missouri, and it was like the yellow brick road where you don't have to navigate anymore. You don't have to worry about getting lost. There's a lot of rail trails are covered with trees, so you're not going to get sunburned.
Right.
It's nice and cool. They are old rail trails, so they go through towns every 10 miles. You don't need to carry a lot of stuff because you can just, resupply every hour or so. So the Katy Trail has a special place in my heart. I loved some of the rail trails up in Wisconsin, the Glacial Drumlin Trail into Milwaukee. The Erie Canal Trail isn't technically a rail trail. It's an old towpath along the Erie Canal. That one's beautiful and fun and very far. If you're looking for a long one, it's like 400 miles all the way across New York. And then there's, the C&O Trail from Maryland into DC. There's so many good ones. And I love what the Rails to Trails Conservancy is doing and promoting more of these and building more rail trails for cyclists, because they are safe. You're not going to get hit by a car on a rail trail.
So the Katy Trail stands out for you. Is that because it was your first sort of sojourn into it? And then, of course, it goes on for such a long ways?
Yeah, I'd never, in Colorado, we don't have rail trails. There's not a lot in the West. It's mostly a Midwest Eastern thing.
Yeah.
So I'd never really heard of it. And so when I got to this trail, I was like, are you kidding me? All I had to do is just wake up every day and get on this like awesome gravel path and just ride it all day long. And there's going to be towns and places to camp and water fountains the whole way. This is amazing. That's why I call it the Yellow Brick Road. It really is like la 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 la. It's perfect.
So have you ever read the book Miles from Nowhere?
I haven't.
In terms of recommendations, when people are asking me for content, I'll say that. So this book is a California couple. It's written by the wife, and it's either late 70s or early 80s. And the wife maybe rode like 30 miles. I mean, no real training ahead of starting out to do a world tour. And it's a really awesome book. And I'll say that my wife, we listened to it as a book on tape or audio book on a long trip. And then that same summer, I got introduced to Love Cycles. So for those who might be familiar with that book, I felt like Love Cycles was the modern equivalent to that book. So I'll sort of leave you with that to kind of chew on, to go out.
I'm going to write this down. Miles from Nowhere.
Miles from Nowhere. I'll say that my wife also enjoyed the Love Cycle series. So kudos to you, for that as well.
I love Love Cycles. I look back on that adventure as one of the most impactful adventures of my life. It was amazing to do it with Allie, this woman who I had just met and fallen in love with. I love the theme of asking people for love advice, from Harley bike riders to farmers in the middle of nowhere. And because that's something we can all connect with. Every human connect with the idea of love and relationships. Not everybody can fathom the idea of riding across the country or some of the other crazy things that we cyclists do. We can all relate to relationships and to love. And I think that's why the series was so popular for people who don't even like bikes.
Right. And I think it's really brilliant that universality. You've got in a lot of your videos, you talk about how you enjoy going through these small towns, and you are literally interacting with people from all walks of life and asking them for love advice, which I thought was just awesome.
Thanks. And I'm still really close with Allie. I'm so grateful for the experience. People ask me all the time, like, oh, you broke up, was it worth it? I'm like, of course it was. It was amazing. It didn't turn out the way that we had hoped, but that's another thing that people can relate to. Love stories don't always have a happy ending, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way it is, but we're still friends, and we're still very important people in each other's lives.
And you guys have been dating for all of about 6 weeks when you decided to do it. Yeah,
exactly. We met, we fell in love, and we're like, let's do something big. To really get to know each other. Let's ride across the country.
And that's the other thing that really is a big theme in this book. She really articulates in this book the stresses that put on their relationship, and they actually met another couple along the way who were doing the same thing, and that couple didn't make it, as a direct result of the stress of the tour that they were doing. So even that sort of has its correlations to this book. So again, we really invite you to check that out. I know you love maps, and so I'm curious to know, do you happen to know how many U.S. states that you've ridden in?
Oh man, I don't know a lot of them, but I don't know. I mean, all of the West Coast states, all of the East Coast states on the Eastern Seaboard, across the country a few times. I haven't ridden through, funny enough, Montana on any of those rides, North Dakota, South Dakota, but pretty much everything else.
So most of the continental, or the 48, lower 48, I guess, as they say. Well, cool. So, and I think it's correct to say that you've ridden through at least some portion of Kentucky. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So on my 2009 ride where I was riding a cruiser bike across the country, I went through Kentucky. Yeah, I loved it.
Well, what do you remember about it?
I remember going to Louisville.
Uh-huh.
Louisville, how do you guys say it?
Well, you got to swallow it. We say Louisville.
Louisville. Okay,
You know,
Louisville.
yeah.
I remember going through Louisville and just really, I enjoyed it. I remember like fields, I hear of Kentucky bluegrass and all that, and horses and stuff like that. I remember riding through fields of just like beautiful blue grass, like really almost looked blue, and then horses off in the distance. It rained a lot when I was in Kentucky too, so I remember
Yeah.
that.
That makes it memorable for sure. So what
And I
time of year was
remember
it?
it was August,
Yeah.
and I remember crossing from Kentucky into Ohio, and I remember immediately not liking Ohio nearly as much.
Well, that's very kind. I'll say that for the benefit of our neighbors to the north, Ohio actually has like over 300 miles of paved rail trail as a
Oh
network.
wow.
So they really got it going on.
I need to go back, but yeah, I just
Despite your
remember.
experience on the road, so I'll give a little nod to Ohio, but I'll take it. I'll
Yeah,
appreciate that Ryan Van Duzer during his touring experience thought Kentucky was prettier.
I did. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, very good. So I know, in my own list of places that I want to ride exceeds my available time. But since you've made having and filming adventures your life's work, you've actually been able to cover quite a bit of ground. But as far as cycling goes, what are some of the routes or trails that are still on your bucket list?
Oh, I have so many. I want to ride the length of Sweden. So from the very southern tip to the northern tip during the summertime, where it's sunny 24 hours a day, way up north above the Arctic Circle. I really want to do that. Another reason is because I lived in Sweden. I have a lot of connections to Sweden. I speak Swedish, so I think that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah.
I'd love to ride more in Europe in general. I'd love to ride in Africa. Asia, Vietnam is supposed to be amazing places to ride bikes. I'd love to ride around Australia. There's so many. I have a long list.
Are there any other places in the US that are on your bucket list?
There are some more like bike packing, mountain bikey
Yeah.
routes that I want to do. Bikepacking.com has a lot of these
Oh, yeah.
routes. There's supposed to be like a hot springs loop in Idaho, which just goes to hot springs every night. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I want to do
Are you
that.
more drawn to those kind of adventures now as opposed to road tours?
I am. And the main reason is because of distracted drivers and cars. I just don't trust humans anymore, unfortunately. People are looking at their phones and they're messing around with stuff. They're not paying attention to the road. And so I love being on dirt because you never have to worry about cars. Yeah, I'd love to do some more tours in Arizona. I want to do the Arizona Trail. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about your filming style, which I would describe as cinematic. You do an amazing job at capturing the natural beauty that you encounter on your adventures. How would you say that your style has changed since you first started doing the YouTube channel?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first started doing this, cameras weren't nearly as cool as they are now. I mean, drones have completely changed the game, where you can get beautiful cinematic footage with a drone and take it up into the air 500 feet. And it's just, whoa. I mean, it would cost $10,000 to hire a helicopter to get those shots just 10 years ago. Cameras are a big one, but I spend the time to really highlight the simple details and the simple beauty of a bike ride. It'd be very easy just to like have the GoPro and get GoPro footage and interview people like I do, but like miss all the little details of like flowers blowing in the wind or slow motion shots of water in a creek bed. And I use a lot of natural sound to really bring the viewer into the video. If you've watched even in the last like year, I'm really lowering the volume of songs and audio. I've been releasing some videos with zero music at all. So it is just natural sound. So it really gives the viewer an idea of what it's like to be out there and listen to what's actually happening and not be manipulated by some music.
Yeah.
I love music. It's fun to put in sometimes, but I really have been experimenting a lot with just quiet videos and just hearing the crunch of the tires on gravel and wind and stuff like that.
So, and as far as cycling videos go, I would say that you're probably the drone master. How long would you say that it took you to master the art of riding a bike while flying a drone at the same time?
I've smashed a lot of drones in the process. It takes a little while. I mean, it was actually a lot easier than I thought. When I first got a drone, I was really scared and nervous that I was going to crash it right away. $1,000 camera, smash it or lose it right away. But I was happy to realize that you put it up in the air and it's not that hard. It's kind of like playing a video game. And what I tell people who want to do similar things to me is like, just make very subtle movements with the drone. You don't need to fly it all around and like move the camera up and down and pan, like just very subtle, slow movements or what I do. And if you watch my videos, when I stop to fly the drone, you'll see I get a shot from behind me following me, and then I'll ride with it while filming, very subtle movements. Follow me for maybe 30 seconds so I know I have a good shot of that. And then I will stop, get the drone in front of me, and then I will ride toward the drone so it's a different angle. Then I'll try to get the drone to the side of me, and then sometimes up top pointing straight down, so that when I edit that together, it looks like I have an entire crew there getting all these different angles.
Yeah.
So it's not just one angle from behind. It's like a whole set of images. I think that's really important to show the viewer, again, all the different angles of a certain moment. And a lot of times for me, I'll be down on the ground, hidden in trees in Montana or something. I don't know what it looks like above. And then I get the drone up high and I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. And you'll get like this, expanse of trees and a little like road cut in there. And to me, it's so beautiful and so simple. And I think people watch that and be like, wow, I want that freedom. I want to go out there and do that. And drones have really allowed me to really portray that just sense of this ultimate freedom.
And you also spend a lot of time, and I think about this as somebody who films my rides, you spend a lot of time setting up a shot where the camera's off on a tripod, you ride back is what we're not seeing. And then we see you, riding into the frame. Where I was most thought, OMG, and I don't know if this was just finished watch your latest Colorado Trail video why am I doing this, one. And there's this footage of you climbing up this hill, which implies, and most viewers may not be thinking about this, that you actually rode up the hill, set up the camera, went back down the hill, and then rode back up the hill. How many times do you do stuff like that? I mean, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it's hard. That's the hardest part of filming, is like you're, dying up a hill, and that you should be filming it, because if you don't film it, if you don't get those angles, it's hard to tell the story. If you just like get to the top of the hill magically and you don't really show how you got there, and you're like, oh, by the way, this was really hard to get to the top, the viewer, it's not as immersive. The viewer didn't see it happen. And so, yeah, it takes effort where I'll set the bike down, and in that instance, I actually didn't ride up, I ran up. So okay. I set the bike down, I run up to the top of the hill, set up the camera, hit record, run back as fast as I can because I don't want to waste battery, and get on my bike and do it again. And I do that, I don't know how many times a day. It really depends. But those shots are vital just to give, again, the viewer a different angle of what's going on. So you have the drone shots, you have the tripod shots, and then you have the GoPro shots that give you the more POV footage. So when you put all three of those cameras together, again, it looks like you have a team out there documenting your ride.
You do a lot of solo bike adventures, and so you don't have to answer to anybody when you're doing it solo. How do things change when you've got riding partners out there? I mean, are they like, oh, come on, Ryan, why do you have to do, how do they get worn out by the establishing shots like that?
Yeah, I try to warn anybody who rides with me that this is kind of how it goes. And it's going to take a little bit longer because I'm going to be setting up shots. And it's hard because when I'm alone, like I just do it and it doesn't matter. But when I'm with people, even if they've said, oh, it's okay, you can stop me whenever you want. I don't get all the angles that I normally would. So
Yeah.
when I'm with John and Mira, or I'm with Dana, they've given me permission to like be annoying and set up the tripod, but
You do it
I
less.
personally don't get all the shots that I would normally get.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that
you'll
makes sense.
notice very subtle difference. My solo adventures are definitely better documented than the videos with people. They
Yeah.
just are, because I'm
That
stopping.
totally makes sense to me. I get
Yeah.
it. So you also employ, the very it's become ubiquitous, that vlogging style throughout your journeys, when we get that narrative. And one thing that I can always really relate to in your videos is when you express awe for beauty in nature.
Yeah.
You do that a lot, and I really appreciate the fact that you take that time and express that. I know I have moments. I haven't done very many solo journeys, but I'm like riding down the trail and I'm talking to somebody. And I'm like, whoa, I got to stop the conversation, because I'm like, you're like riding through a postcard here, and you're going to miss out on it if you don't stop, to appreciate that. You're a really strong rider relative to me anyway. You tend to cover a lot of ground each day, but you stop and take in that natural beauty around you. Can you talk a bit about how you balance, getting the miles in versus stopping to appreciate?
That's a really great question. And I get this a lot from people. Like, how do you balance it? How do you be in the moment? Because I talk a lot about being present as well, and just being there, not thinking about distractions of life. But I am documenting. This is my job. I need to stop and set up the camera. And, there are moments where I'm super tired, or I'm with somebody else who's tired, and I've just met somebody interesting on the trail and I want to interview them. And it's like, it's going to delay the day, of course.
Yeah.
But I look at it as my job, and I want to show viewers what is happening out there, and the excitement of a beautiful view or a rainbow, or meeting an awesome individual who has a unique story. And I want to capture all that, but there's plenty of things that I don't capture, for sure. These videos that you watch are 15 to 25 minutes sometimes out of a 24-hour
Right.
day. So there's a
Right.
lot of the day that I am not filming. And sometimes it does get to the point where I'm like, I just need to focus on getting in miles, because I'm racing a storm. So for safety's sake, I might not film as much. But again, like when things get rough like that, that's when I want to film, because that's dramatic. If you look back to the series this May, where I was going through New Mexico,
Yeah.
pushing my bike through 20 miles of snow, like documenting that was not fun. It was hard. It made everything longer and harder.
Yeah.
But again, it made the video very compelling, because people were like, oh, I see what he's going through.
And so you mentioned that you often encounter, people on your journeys and stop to interview them, which is something I really would like to do more of. But I tell you, I'm always a little weary of putting a camera in the face of somebody I just met. So can you tell me a little bit about the typical conversation that you have before the camera starts rolling?
You have so many good questions. These are great. I really appreciate the effort you put into this. So yeah, that's another one I get asked a lot as well. And I don't just roll up to somebody, cameras blazing, I don't spook them with cameras on. I will usually come across somebody and talk to them a little bit. Well, what are you doing? Small talk. And then I'll say, hey, you know what? I have this YouTube channel and I document my rides, and my viewers really love to hear stories from other people, not just me. They get sick of me. Would you be willing to tell me your story? And 9.9 times out of 10, people say, yeah, sure, no problem. That's how I do it. I definitely don't just go straight in with the camera, because it is awkward if you just did it like that.
Yeah.
And even then, most humans aren't used to being on camera. So there's a sense of, a lot of people just get a little nervous when they're on camera.
Yes.
Or they're telling their story. So I really try to, make the situation as comfortable as possible before I hit the record button, so that once I do, they're just chatting with me like we would on the trail if there were no cameras around.
Do you have any kind of different technique in terms of how you film? I mean, are you behind the camera, or are you kind of off, Or how
I'm
does that?
usually, yeah, if I have my little camera, I'm kind of behind it and I'll be making eye contact with them. So
Yeah.
they can, I'll tell them, like, pretend the camera's not here. You and I are having a conversation. And I'll say, tell me about why you're out here. Tell me about what inspires you to do something like this. Because I want to hear their stories. It's interesting.
Yeah.
In my most recent video, I interviewed a couple of old gentlemen who had
Yeah.
retired and done all these huge adventures, and
Yeah.
really inspiring story that I really wanted to capture.
Old
And
timer, and what
old
was the other one's
timer,
name?
and I forget the other guy's name already, but yeah.
Yeah.
And now, it's kind of weird to say it, a lot of people recognize me on the trails or out there in the road. So it is
Yeah.
easier to film them because they know that's what I do.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I get to be on your YouTube channel? Sweet, let's do this.
Yeah, that would make it easier. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So let's talk about your bikes. So you've got a great video where you actually talk all about your bikes. I'll put a link to that. But if you were to wake up tomorrow and find that one of your bikes was gone, which one would you be the saddest to learn that it was?
The saddest to learn. Geez. I really try not to be too attached to things. That's kind of who I am in general.
Yeah.
And if you watch my videos, I give away bikes a lot. After the Baja Divide, I gave my bike to a local kid there. In Cuba, I gave a bike away. It's like, I want to give my bike to somebody who I know it'll be a huge deal for them, and they would never be able to buy a bike like this without me just handing it over to them. So I don't really have that much of an emotional attachment to really any of my bikes. So I hate to say it, but none of them, they're all kind of on the same level.
Okay.
I guess as far as like a sentimental bike, the one that I rode home from Honduras,
Yeah.
is hanging up in my house, and it's broken. It doesn't work anymore. That one to me has the most sentimental value because I rode it for 2 years in Honduras in my village to the other small villages where I worked with kids. And that's the one I rode home. I also used that bike to ride from Maine to Key West and across the country, and from Vancouver to Cabo. So that bike actually has the most miles of any of my bikes.
And that was just like a hardtail mountain bike, right?
Yeah, it was a Trek 8000 hardtail mountain bike.
Yeah.
Just a simple bike, but I rode that thing into the ground, and I actually made a video about it that's kind of talks about why I love that bike so much.
Question from another Kentucky bike packer has to do with the Priority 600X, which is of course, the bike that you were involved in designing. The question is, how do you feel like it fared on your recent trip on the Colorado Trail? And were there places where you wish you were on a full suspension bike instead?
So the 600X is like my dream bike, and it's a dream situation to have even been able to design this bike with Priority. And it has pretty much everything I would ever want. There were moments on the Colorado Trail where it would have been nice to have full suspension on some of those downhills. Some of those downhills are like the most technical riding I've ever done. And on a hardtail, it just doesn't, it doesn't take the impact like a full suspension would. But full suspensions are very hard to bike pack with because they don't have the same frame real estate for bags.
Yeah.
And so if you look at a lot of the Colorado Trail riders, and most of them are on hardtails, just because it's easier to carry stuff. But me, as like a mountain biking is my first love of bikes. When I was, in middle school, I started mountain biking in the hills outside of Boulder. So I love full suspension bikes. Just for bike packing, they're a little bit more difficult. But maybe someday designs will change and we'll be able to do a full suspension one. But 600X is going to be hardtail for now.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Speaking of the 600X, many of us watched as you returned to New Mexico in an attempt.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, well, then good. You can already prepare your answer. But an attempt to finish out the southern end of that Great Divide mountain bike route. And in that last video, when your carbon belt broke, you appeared to be pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And then the next video, you're just basically back home. So can you tell us a little bit about what happened when you stopped filming?
Yeah. So I broke the unbreakable, essentially. I've never worried about my carbon belt drives. I've never had a problem. On the first trip on the Great Divide last summer, I had a spare with me. But this one, I was like, oh, I'm just going to do New Mexico. It's only 700 miles. It's a brand new bike, brand new belt drive. Nothing's going to happen. And of course, what happens? I break it. When I stopped filming, I was like 3 miles away from a road. And then I got onto a road and probably spent another hour trying to hitchhike. And then finally got a car to take me to a nearby town. And then I met up with some viewers actually, and they let me stay at their house. And then my buddy drove down from Albuquerque and picked me up, which was like 7 hours away from where I was. Very nice guy. Thank you, John Wilkes. And he took me to Albuquerque, and then I flew home from Albuquerque. That's how I got home from that ordeal. And it's also how I would have gotten home if I had made it the final 100 miles. He was going to come down and pick me up anyway. And yeah, it was a bummer, but luckily it happened when it did. If it had happened like the first day 2, I would have been really bummed out. Yeah. Because that would have like robbed me of this amazing experience. Or I would have just figured out another way. I mean, Priority would have FedExed overnight a new belt drive if I really wanted it. Yeah. I called them that day I broke it. They're like, we can send you one overnight if you want. And I was at that point, I was just kind of toast. It had been a very tough week on the bike. And the last 100 miles of the Great Divide are supposed not to be great. That's like 80 miles on a skinny road. And a rider died a couple of years ago getting hit by a car. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to do those final 100 miles. I'm good.
You did a whole interview, about why the belt failed, and seems like, there was just a wild combination of things. I mean, all the different things you were throwing at it, and then I guess ultimately how you ended up putting the belt on had a role and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily the fault of the belt. People shouldn't, I'm assuming you're still very much a fan of the carbon belt.
It was a freak accident. I think Priority has sold tens of thousands of bikes. I think they've only had 3 buyers ever say they've broken a belt. It doesn't happen very often, but I put it through some serious stress on that ride, the mud being when it really went downhill. Yeah. And no, I'm a big believer. I love the low maintenance drivetrain.
But now you carry an extra belt.
I carry an extra belt. Exactly.
Well, so the last question related to bikes. So I also want to mention that one of your bikes is that 3-speed cruiser bike that you rode across the country. And a big part of the message that you were trying to promote in that tour was that you don't have to have a fancy bike to get started. And, cost, can definitely be a barrier to entry for new folks. And I say one upside of COVID is that we've got a lot more people getting outside and riding. So what advice would you offer to a new rider with limited resources?
Yeah, people ask me all the time through email, what bike should I get? And I'm not like a bike pro. I know about the bikes that I ride, but I'm not like an all-knowing guy that knows all about bikes. And I always tell people, go to your local bike shop and talk to the local people first. They will know best how to fit you on a bike. But you're also, right now during COVID times, there aren't a lot of bikes. There's not a lot of bikes stock. It takes 6 months to get a new bike. I say go use. I say go to your local community shop if there is one. Boulder has a great community bike shop where they're always getting bikes donated and they fix them up and sell them. You can get a sweet bike for $200. Yeah. I've met people who've been on bike tours who bought their bikes on Craigslist and spend a couple $100 and they were just fine. And so the biggest thing is you want to fit your bike right, because if you're going to be sitting on it for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, it needs to be comfortable. And so if you find the best bike you could ever find, but it's a little bit too big, it's not going to be a good buy for you, even if it has the cool paint job or great components. Getting fit on that bike is really important. But yeah, you don't need the best of the best. I rode a very simple 3-speed cruiser, 3,000 miles across the United States in 2009. It probably retails for $350 or something.
Yeah.
Nowadays I do have some good bikes, which is really exciting, but I didn't grow up with a ton of money. And, I had some just regular old bikes. Even my bike I rode home from Honduras I bought it used. It was a used Trek hardtail mountain bike. It's definitely not top of the line. It was like an $800 bike. So there's a lot of ways to get started, but then also physically people can be intimidated by mileage. And it's like, just start small and go from there. Like, don't just go for your first century ride the first day you get a bike because you want to be like the guy on YouTube. Do what's within your physical ability. Otherwise, it's going to hurt. And if it hurts, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to try it again.
Yeah.
But if you're having fun doing it, then you're probably going to want to do it again. Right. So ride with other people. That makes things fun. Ride in areas where there's not a lot of traffic, hopefully, so you're not stressed out the whole time. And just pedal as far as you feel comfortable, and then, you know, stop, and then maybe the next week you go a few more miles.
Great advice. So let's talk about some of your signature items, or Duzerisms, if you will. When did you first decide that you were going to do a little dance as you cross the state line?
That was when I did the 2009 cruiser bike ride across the country, because I knew that I was going to be crossing a lot of state borders.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, when I get to these state signs, like, welcome to New Mexico, it's just fun to be goofy and like have a little celebration, you know? Yeah. And it's totally dorky. And I know it's dorky, but it's also fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can add more moments of fun into your adventure, you're going to enjoy it more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What was the inspiration for no crashies, no flatties, no whammies?
Yeah. So I started doing that on my ride home from Honduras. And again, it's a dorky little mantra that I started doing back in 2005. And I was alone at the time, you know, and it was kind of scary. It was my first bikepacking trip. I was on my own. I was in Central America. And it was just my way of pumping myself up in the morning and to, you know, telling myself that I'm warding off these evil spirits. So no crashes, no flats, and no whammies. And whammies are, people ask me all the time what a whammy is. I tell people, use your imagination. Whammies are just bad, unthinkable things that you could never just expect. You know, like maybe you're getting chased by a swarm of murder hornets, or maybe a mudslide. I mean, just crazy stuff. It's just fun to dream about what could happen out there. But there was also a TV show back in the day called Press Your Luck. And there was a moment where you had to like push a button, and there's like this little gremlin thing that went across the TV screen. And if it like landed on your pot of money, it would eat your money or whatever. So you go, big buddy, big money, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies, big money.
Yeah. No, I remember that.
That's where the kind of the chant came from, is that TV show.
Cool. Yeah. So did you originate singing Olé through tunnels?
I mean, through tunnels, maybe, but I learned that when I lived in Mexico, going to soccer games, and these stadiums of 70,000 people would be doing ole, 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 and it would just reverberate through these stadiums, and it felt so fun. And everybody can obviously sing the words, and it's not complicated. And when I came home from Mexico, that was a trip that I went to when I was in college. I came back, and we have the thing here in Boulder called the Thursday night cruiser ride, where we ride bikes on Thursdays, and we would ride around traffic circles, and I would do ole, 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 but only during traffic circles. And then I realized it's fun to do it in tunnels because there's a good echo.
I'm going to say that the answer is yes, as far as tunnels are concerned. But I'll say that, you know, you've become an influencer for sure. I don't know if you've had this experience. I consume a lot of YouTube content, and I'll say that it is not uncommon. I've seen multiple YouTubers who, when they hit a tunnel, they'll start singing just like you do. So really? I'm assuming, yeah, absolutely.
I've seen it on YouTube. People will send me videos of themselves doing it.
Yeah.
Just because they're like, Ryan's going to love this. So they'll send me a video through like Instagram or something, but I didn't know that it had made some YouTube channel. That's great.
Yeah, no, more than one. And so, which is why I phrased the question like I did. I mean, I'm assuming that your influence has rubbed off enough that their inclination now is when they hit a tunnel to start singing Olé, you know, so.
I like it.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about fun. It's about like just like something to look forward to. You know, a tunnel's coming. You're with your buddies. You're like, let's do the Olé song. And it's just, you know, there's 15 seconds of Olé that just gets you pumped up for a second, and then you continue your ride.
Cool. When did your love of burritos begin?
I've always loved Mexican food, even since I was a little boy. Mexican food's been my favorite. But if you watch my channel, I've spent a lot of time in Latin American world, like Honduras and Mexico, and I love them. I just straight up love them. People ask me all the time if I get sick of beans, and I don't.
Well, that was actually the another bikepacker question here. Said, and this is exactly how he worded it. How do you go on so many frijoles, cold at that?
Yeah, so I don't bring a stove when I'm on these bike rides because it's just easy to open up a can and put the beans onto a tortilla. And when you're starving, when you've worked hard all day, like anything tastes amazing.
Yeah.
And the beans don't need to be cooked. I mean, of course, warm beans are better, maybe, but I like the simplicity of just opening up a can and putting them on a tortilla.
Well, Ryan, you have a reputation for being a super positive guy, and you're a fan of the Muppets.
Yes.
Do you think these two things are related?
I do. I love the Muppets because they're goofy and they're fun and they're playful, but they're also like, they're not mean to each other. Like, I've always loved Jim Henson and what he's done, not just with the Muppets, but everything else. And one of my favorite quotes, if I can get it right, is like, some people criticize me for being relentlessly happy, but it has always worked for me. And that was straight out of Jim Henson's mouth.
Yeah, and this is actually appears on your website. So I'll go ahead and say it says, "I know I drive some people crazy with what seems to be ridiculous optimism, but it has always worked for me."
There we go. Yeah, thank you. I love it. I love the Muppets. My favorite Christmas movie is the Muppets Christmas Carol. I don't know if you've seen that one. It's pretty good.
Of course.
Yeah. I love Kermit. I love Gonzo. And again, they're just playful and fun. And we need more of that in today's world. There's a lot of just anger out there and a lot of just judgments. And, I think we should go back to our roots of being kids and just, forgetting about all the division and be more like the Muppets.
I have to say, I mean, I think it's your optimism is really contagious. And I think it's, that quality that really inspires us to want to get out there like you do. And speaking of your optimism, another guy I ride with wanted to know how you maintain your positivity when the going gets tough, like the weather or the mechanicals or wrong turns, whatever it is. How do you maintain that optimism that is so much part of your signature of who you are?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot. And I also get questioned a lot of people say, is he really like that? Am I always this way? And the answer is definitely not always. Like, I'm a human like anybody, and I go through hard times and I can get bummed out and depressed. If you watch the video about the breakup with Allie, I'm pretty raw about how that affected me. But I always look at the bright side of life, even during the hardest times, and not even just bad weather or a hard day riding up a mountain. That is like easy compared to like when life really gets hard.
Yeah.
But for me, when you can smile through a situation or make light of something, it does make it easier. And if you watch my videos and I'm struggling through something, whether it's 100-mile race, I'm usually kind of laughing about it because it's ridiculous in a way, these situations that I get myself in. If you do get negative, if you do get cranky, like, that's fine. Those are human emotions, but you don't want to stay there too long because it's not productive. Because then you just start beating yourself up. You go into a dark place. You start thinking, oh, why am I out here? I shouldn't be doing this. And you talk yourself out of completing an adventure or a race or whatever it is in life. And if you go into something with a positive attitude, it's going to be beneficial to you, but also the people around you. Because there might be some moments where you're not alone, you're with a group of people and something hard is happening. And if you're like a grump, it's not going to bring the group up. It's going to bring everybody down. And I've always been one of those guys, even since I was a young person. I realized the power of being positive. It's absolutely okay to have dark moments. I mean, we're humans again, but you can't sit there for too long and dwell on the hardships. When I've gone through heartbreaks with different relationships, there are days and weeks where I am depressed and sad. But, you have to like slowly pull yourself out of that. Otherwise, where are you going to go from there? Down, right? You need to like slowly start appreciating the things in life that are beautiful and good. And that's why I talk a lot about being grateful on my channel. And I think that is the number one thing to happiness, is to really show gratitude for what we do have in life. And it can be as simple as the sun coming out in the morning after a rainy day, or a tasty Cliff Bar, or anything. You just got to start somewhere, being grateful for what we do have. And I think a lot of humans get lost in the negative, where we need to get away from that and be like, okay, I've had a bad day, things aren't turning out the way I wanted to, but I need to turn this around. And by practicing gratitude, you're going to slowly pick yourself up.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, I can't really tell you how much of a thrill it is for me to be able to sit and be able to chat with you. Before we wrap things up here, I want to see if there's anything that I haven't already asked you about that you'd like to share with the Kentucky cycling audience.
I think we covered. This is a really, really good interview. I appreciate you taking the time to really come up with some thoughtful questions, because they're not always like this. And so I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you saying that. In closing, I want to share with you my own favorite Jim Henson quote, which is, "My hope is to still leave the world a bit better than when I got here."
Yeah.
And Ryan, I know that I speak not only for myself, but a great many others when I say that I believe you've already achieved that goal in spades.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. This channel, what I'm doing is a dream, to be able to document adventures and share them with the world and inspire people. I've talked about this on my channel as well, but I call this my emotional paycheck, because YouTube, you don't make a ton of money off of YouTube. But when somebody emails me and said, "Hey, Ryan, I watched your videos and I got all fired up and I pulled my bike out of the garage for the first time in 15 years and I started riding it and I lost 30 pounds," or whatever. Those are the emails that I love getting. And I get them a lot now. And it really makes me feel good about what I'm doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be a guest on the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. And please keep doing you. The world needs more light and love in it, and bike love at that. So thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. And a big ole to all the viewers out there. Ole, 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 ole. Thank you, buddy.
As always, we hope you found this content useful. If you did, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks.